Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing today? My name is Barry Ramey, and I am the host of American Rising, a new show on Enrique Tarrio's network, the War Boys Studios. This is a version of my show with a project that we are all working on called WeTheJ6ers.com. And we are hoping now to highlight the true stories of the men and women and their plights of what they went through both on January 6th during their trials and persecutions and their prison sentences, and we're finding a common denominator that it's not exactly normal as far as your average prison sentence goes. And for a long time, these men and women, they have been silenced. They have been not allowed to talk to the media, even through the Bureau of Prisons own protocols to do so. It's not actually against the rules in the Bureau of Prisons, also known as the BOP, to speak to the media, to write out letters to loved ones, and so on and so forth. That is being disabled from doing that is not part of a prison sentence. Yet a lot of the J6ers were prevented from doing so, and we, the J6ers.com, are hoping to now find out what was going on with all these individuals while they were incarcerated, and not just complain and whine and be victims, because none of those things we are. We are trying to come together to corroborate our stories and inflict change on the U.S. justice system moving forward. Because let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. The Bureau of Prisons is extremely corrupt just on the surface level of wasting U.S. taxpayers' dollars alone. There is far more egregious things that go on, but that alone has gone on long enough and has gone on too far. And, in the very unlikely event that my words reach the ears of anyone affiliated or associated with the Doge team, you really need to consider on interviewing the J6ers, because a lot of us have taken meticulous notes through the time we are incarcerated and can point you directly to where the Bureau of Prisons is wasting U.S. taxpayers' money and has been doing so for a long, long time. But with that, I will digress. Thank you for tuning in. You can follow us now on X at WeTheJ6ers.com, and or at WeTheJ6ers on X, our website, WeTheJ6ers.com. I encourage everyone there to go to, because we are going to be acting as a service for the men and women that were caught up in January 6th, that are good speakers and willing to tell their stories, so that hopefully we can chip away at the Patriot Act and the other things going on in our country that are egregiously unconstitutional. And the Patriot Act is a good place to start. So my guest today is one of our featured speakers on WeTheJ6ers.com. He's I would consider him a brother in arms, a brother in jump rope, a brother in water polo. What anything I got involved in life, and this dude was with me, he's a fucking brother as far as I'm concerned. We were forged in fire together, and this individual is a decorated veteran, a proud patriotic American, and like so many other J6ers, in fact, all of us, was labeled a domestic terrorist. This individual is well, I'm going to let him describe himself for you in his own words. Mr. Rob Morris, my brother, how are you, good friend? Good friend.
Hey man, it's so good to see you. Man, you look sharp. I'm really proud of you, bro. You just
Yeah,
make me
well,
smile over here, man.
I actually paused it and went and changed when I saw the fireplace and the coat, man, and already got that luscious, He-Man hair,
Oh
so
yeah.
I had to pick it up, a notch.
Hey, we're
My
stepping it
brother.
up around here, man.
Yeah, my brother, man, God, we went through hell and back together. We were in Northern Neck for a while. You were there for quite some time. We got
Yep.
packed on a bus and were sent to Lewisburg,
Yep.
a maximum security federal penitentiary, where
Yep.
they house MS-13. And
Yep.
driving in there, it looks like Shawshank Redemption.
It does.
You're getting. I mean, we're getting in there like, oh shit, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, yes, it could be a violent and dangerous place, but we were treated actually really well there. Considering, all things prison, it still sucked. It was prison, but considering
Considering where we came from in
where we
Northern
came
Neck, that was
from,
an
north,
upgrade.
Yeah, it's funny because, and we'll get into this. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback, and I mean, and it's weird because it's from so many different demographics of people that I didn't even know were paying that close attention to anything January
Mhm.
6th related, that have commented to me about how incredible your Northern Neck video was of you going back
Oh,
there and confronting the board at Northern Neck Regional Jail in Virginia,
thank
including
you.
my sister, who's probably going to be watching this, and she's going to get very upset with me when I disclose the fact that my sister has a big crush on you, dude. Like you're her
Aw.
favorite. You're her favorite J6er. You know,
Hey, well, she just had a birthday recently, so happy birthday, sis.
she did. It was yesterday. Yes, she did. She did. She's going to be happy to hear that. But she remembers meeting you when we were seeing our family for the first time. For me,
Mhm.
it was 9 months, even longer for you at
Yeah,
Lewisburg when you were finally able to give your mother an embrace and hug. And
yeah,
my sister was there for that. So,
that's cool, man.
that's where we're at now in life, It's great to
Yeah,
see you. It's great to be free. And so let's get into it. As you heard, what we the j6ers.com is hoping to do, and we're going to, not hoping, we're going to do it,
okay.
is really get our stories out there to the public, because I think one of the most dangerous things that happened with us was the narrative that we were domestic terrorists.
Yeah,
Now, I encourage all Americans that aren't so far left that they're just gone to put aside for a second your feelings. You're people are allowed to agree that some of us were wrong or out of hand. I mean, I could speak for myself because so many of my brothers and sisters were innocent and should not have even been questioned by the authorities, let alone thrown in jail. But you can agree that, okay, the day shouldn't have happened. But what I'm trying to get people to understand is what the government was able to do because of that day, and with their pundits in the media and their tentacles in the media, they were able to frame a group of political opponents, more or less, that do not agree with them and their political stance, and were able to frame it dangerously so that these people were domestic terrorists, to the
yes.
point where the prison system was demanded that they treat us like domestic terrorists.
Yeah,
And we're American citizens. You may not agree with us politically, but we're American citizens.
yeah.
I want to start off with you, Rob, asking you a little bit about your background. Explain to people both your service to this nation as an Army Ranger and also your service after the Rangers, what you pursued as a career and why you pursued that career. So go ahead.
Thank you, man. Well, hey, first and foremost, I just want to say thanks for having me on. This is a great opportunity. So, thank you for choosing me, and I'll make you proud, boy. So, uh, I will say that I left home at the age of 17 to go join the army. I left Reno, Nevada. So I'm a West Coaster, but I left Lake Tahoe to become. Well, I didn't really anticipate becoming a ranger. I wanted to be airborne. I wanted to be in the 173rd Airborne Division in Vicenza, Italy. And because of my marksmanship capability and my endurance for long distance running and how fast I was, and I didn't make a single mistake, out of the 300 plus candidates within our basic training company, there's 8 ranger slots, and I earned one of them. So I became a ranger, went through that selection process, deployed to Afghanistan 3 times, served my country honorably on 3 combat deployments. And then, but it was on my first deployment to Afghanistan that as I was walking through the location called Sharana, that my country would turn into the bombed out homes and the devastated population and just the toxic and horrific environment if the next generation didn't know how to keep this republic. I was able to recognize that America will look like Afghanistan if the kids that are being brainwashed in these schools lose the freedom that we can walk away from in a single generation. So I didn't reenlist. I used the GI Bill upon exiting the Army honorably to go to Penn State. I really enjoyed their education program that they offered there. And so I used the GI Bill to get a degree in secondary education from Penn State with the hopes of becoming a high school history teacher. I was going to dedicate my entire adult life to teaching these students that it's your patriotic duty to question your government, but it is also an honor and a privilege to be an American. And so that was the point. That was the idea. And I didn't mind being the lone Republican in the classroom, let alone the school district. The next generation, then keeping this republic is worth it. But my mission and my goal was to challenge the student body to think for themselves. I was actually reading a little bit of Cicero earlier where he talks about how the role of education isn't to form students for a particular job or role in life. It's actually about self exploration and learning morality, learning philosophy, intellectual prowess, so that you can fulfill yourself and your calling will reveal itself as you discover who self is. And so Cicero actually kind of revolutionizes the way that education is formed. And that actually, when the Byzantine Empire ended up collapsing, they were astonished to find out that they were still speaking Greek because of Cicero's implementations. And during the Renaissance, Cicero was quoted ad nauseum in all the academies. You read his letters, you read his speeches. And the Enlightenment period was kicked off and inspired by Cicero. But most of our students these days don't even know who that guy is. And so it was a tragic. But, you know, like you, I get excited. And so I'll try to bring it right back to what I was doing. But two
No,
weeks.
you're good, man. You're good. We're here to hear Lego Man. I mean, you have you know, it's funny because I don't I, January 6th brought a lot of alpha human beings, men and women, people that take a strong stance in life, people that show up. So you
Yeah,
can't argue with that. I mean, that the element and the caliber of the human being that showed up on January 6th. I mean, there was a lot of good men and women that just felt compelled, whether you agree with them or not. I
right.
mean, if someone takes a step back and says, "Wow, these people really what they believe, what they believe," and you
We're
know, so
standing on it.
I think it's really hard to overtop the Lego Man because you bring it 100%. You are a true patriotic American. I mean, when I first started getting to know you, it was only like every other night because you were a trustee painter in jail. So you would
That's
come in
right.
at 1 o'clock in the morning and we'd have quick conversations. And
Yeah.
this went on for a long time, you know, 6 months
Months.
for me. Yeah, for me, 6 months. And, you know, and we would, things would happen in the J6 world outside and we'd all get word of it.
Yeah.
And you know, I got over time, I got to see that, man, this guy's for real, man. He's an honorable human being that loves this country very much. So
Thank
I
you.
want to
And I
I want
love
to
our
be able
God too. I love our
you
God
are
too.
yeah, you are definitely a man of God. I remember the prayer sessions that we had that we so desperately needed. And look, they worked. They
They work,
worked. They
baby.
worked.
God is good.
Yeah. So let's talk about real quick. All right, the Lego Man. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that you know this is a story you've probably told 100 times, and you're probably
Yeah.
gonna tell it a million more. Let's just be honest.
That's okay.
Um,
It's a
it's
good
uh
story.
it's a great story. It really is. And it is, I think it's indicative to how conservatives go about dealing with the liberal left and their propaganda machine. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
sometimes it gets us into trouble, but for the most part, it really highlights who we are as a people because from the deplorable label to the garbage label to everything, we just own it. And you know,
Yeah.
I call it the 8 Mile effect. You and I have had this
I
conversation before
remember this.
because
Yes.
my attorney and I had we developed it. We started calling it the 8 Mile effect. And the movie 8 Mile with Eminem, great rapper, total douchebag. Um, um, he made that movie 8 Mile, and at the end he had that famous scene where he says everything that his opponent in the battle rap is going to say about him, that they did
Yep.
jump him, that they did sleep with his girl, this that whatever they were going to say, he said it first, and in the end it had nothing to say. It was all said for him. So I think it's a really good philosophy, and conservatives do it great. They take it and
Yes.
they own it, and they take the sting out of it by making it a
Yes.
t-shirt and a hat and making lots of money selling it. So you did that. You did that. You are an example, a fine example of just that same philosophy. And so let's hear it. How did
Cool.
Lego Man? How did Rob Morris become the Lego Man?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a package deal because I'm not only going to give you that story, but I'm going to give you a follow on story that dawned on me recently that I don't think I've told anyone live yet. So you can be the first to hear this thing because it blew my mind when I heard it.
All
But I
right,
need to give you
you
some
hear that, ladies and
context.
gentlemen. This is breaking news. You're hearing only on the American Rising.
Right.
Go to X right now, we the J Sixers, and follow us. That's our side project. So go ahead, Lego man. How do you get it?
Yeah. Well, so check this out. So I got to give you a little context first. When back in 2016, when I was at Penn State, I was the chief of a tribe called the Bull Moose Party. We were the only club on campus that would endorse Donald Trump for president in 2016, and we developed because the Republican Party on campus wouldn't do it. So we did, and as we're proceeding, we built this wall around the American flag. And, to show that national security was one of the biggest concerns that we had in the 2016 presidential election. And Donald Trump seemed to actually care about our borders and as opposed to the barking candidate Hillary Clinton. So that was cool. But when we won, as the president of the club, I said, okay, now our mission is peace. We need to reconcile. The student body was ripped in half. Now we have to coalesce because we're going to the same football games on Saturdays. So let's figure out how to do that. So I marshaled in a meeting with the Hillary Club and all the Democrats and whatever, and we sat down. I'll never forget this. I'm sitting here talking to another student. He's another Penn Stater, and he's trying to explain to me his philosophy. And with tears in his eyes, he goes, I just don't understand how you guys can be so offensive. Didn't it hurt you when Hillary Clinton, the woman that I was willing to vote for, called you guys deplorables? And I looked at him, I said, no, we laughed. We didn't care. Like what? So I'll never forget that because that right there is the difference between conservatives and your neoliberals. Because classical liberals we're all in league with, but these very, very overgrown infants that are running around getting offended by everything, they will ruin their lives and slit their wrists over a name. Meanwhile, we'll make some money from it and run with it because that's our new flag. So there's a difference. We are not the same. So, anyways, long story short, without further ado, here I am getting arrested on June 11th, 2021. And unbeknownst to me, as I'm being driven away from my apartment, the FBI is entering and they're ransacking my place, and I had a spot close to the high school I was teaching at, and they decided to arrest me on the last day of school, conveniently, which wasn't an accident. They revealed in their transcripts back and forth via email. A year and a half into my incarceration, I finally get my discovery, and the FBI is bragging that we're going to wait to arrest him even though I'm on the FBI's most wanted list for 6 months straight and around kids, no less, every day. They say, we're going to wait to arrest him on the last day of school because we know it's going to hurt him more. So here I am, last day of school, not getting to see my students who I signed the yearbooks of and was invited over and over and over again to the graduation ceremony of. I'm being hauled away, and the FBI is going through my apartment. They're passing by very dangerous objects like the United States Constitution or the Holy Bible, really, really scary stuff. And they come across the nuclear stockpile of Legos that I had in one of my storage areas of my apartment. And, absolutely no shame in admitting that I love Legos as an adult. They actually have like adult version Legos now, which is actually kind of cool. That's a new thing I think that developed while we were locked up.
Wait. What makes a Lego an adult Lego?
Okay, because the pieces are more intricate, they're smaller, the
Okay.
designs are more advanced, and it's something that someone beyond the age of 18 can appreciate. So they have like the Home Alone mansion for sale, or they have like the house from Stranger Things, or they have like the one that I've got recently where it's like a rendition of the Rivendell house from Lord of the Rings.
Okay,
All
because
adult
when
stuff.
you say adult, it's like I feel like I might walk into an adult video store
It's not
and
exotic
see
Legos.
like
We're not talking about exotic Legos.
and have like a Lego section in the Triple X store.
Oh
That's
no.
okay, good. So
Yeah.
at least we have that established because like oh man,
We're not talking about Lego sex toys.
Satan's winning, guys. We need to pick it up and fight back hard.
I know, right?
Maybe fighting back hard is not
No,
the
no.
right term there. All
Let's
right.
just change subjects. This
Yeah.
is a
So back to
bad
what you
place
were
for me to
saying, Rob.
tread into. Yeah. So, anyways, uh, adult Lego sets. You know, you got your Taj Mahals and your Eiffel Towers and stuff, and then there's the Capitol. Well, the FBI acts as if they're finding the holy grail of January 6th, because in this Lego collection of mine, I had none other than a Lego model kit of the United States Capitol. That Lego sold. So here they are. It's like a Seinfeld episode, and they're like, wow, correlation must equal causation, because here he is in possession of a Capitol Lego set, and he was at the Capitol. That must mean he planned all of January 6th. So let's make him the architect of the insurrection and pin the entire day's events on Robert Morse. Dude, it's in my court records, man. Like, they really did try to push this narrative that because I had the Lego set, I'm somehow responsible for everything that happened that day. Even Miranda Devine wrote about it, about the blockheads at the FBI trying to push this narrative, and it's goofy because that's it's indicative of what Stasi and Soviet Union type
So you
themed.
were the tip of the spear
I
too.
was the tip of the
You're
Lego
the tip
spear,
of the
dude.
spear. Yeah, they need to
Yeah,
they need to make that now. They need to make the 7 million tip Trident
I
Lego
know.
edition.
Yeah,
So
but
Miranda
it's
Devine,
so
she writes about
ridiculous.
this. Yeah, it is completely ridiculous. So you're essentially you're accused by the federal government, the Department of Justice, of possessing an unopened Lego set, and
Yes,
they're minority projecting you, and for the Minority Report, and saying that you in the future plan on opening this set,
right.
reconstructing it, and using it as a map to somehow Corella Deville bad guy rope in the middle of the night down the middle of the, rotunda, and,
Right.
with your black mask and,
Yeah.
your little
They
dog
really
named
sat
Spot.
around and thought amongst themselves that this is a good idea. We should totally tell the judge this
It's like they were
publicly.
watching too many fucking Disney movies or something, man. Like,
Dude.
holy cow.
Well, you know what's funny? So the Babylon Bee posts an article immediately after that saying that right next to my Capitol Lego set, that there is a Lego set of Hogwarts Castle, and that me and Voldemort were planning on storming that next, clearly.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, I know you. I can actually believe that. That
Yeah,
sounds
right. Yeah.
more believable than anything. All right, so let me ask you
Well,
this,
hey,
Rob.
I got one more thing to tell you though, because this is what
Please,
I wanted to share,
please.
which is pretty crazy. So we
Oh
believe in the
yeah,
God of the
the
Hebrews.
inside scoop, the reason why you're going
Yeah,
over
this is kind
to
of crazy.
at
So
we the J
obviously,
Sixers on X right now and following it. Isn't that right, ladies and gentlemen? Talking to all
yeah,
those people up there that haven't done it yet. Go ahead.
yes,
Go
get it
ahead, brother.
done. So check us out. So we believe in the God of the Hebrews, and if anyone's read any part of the Old Testament, you learn, and the New, but mostly the Old, that our God is the God who renames men. Abram used to be, or Abram became Abraham. Jacob, who is named, because he's the trickster and the liar and things like this, now got renamed Israel. And, Saul ends up, after persecuting Christians on his road to Damascus, becomes Paul. So there's a lot of individuals that get renamed. Okay. Check this out. Obviously, it's a joke. Like the Lego Man thing is funny. It's goofy. But then a buddy of mine approached me and said, "Hey, do you know what Lego means in Latin?" I said, "No, I don't. My Latin is not as fresh as yours, apparently." He said, "Lego man in Latin literally means I assemble men, I anoint men." So, Lego man, as my new moniker, having been renamed this, the meaning of it is that I assemble and I anoint men. Now, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It kind of makes me understand why the judge used your military service to want to give you more time, because you're obviously a threat, assembling men everywhere you go.
I would
That's
rather be a threat to a tyrannical government than anybody else. That's a badge of
well,
honor as far as I'm concerned.
hey, well, was it Edmund Burke that said all it takes for evil to reign supreme is for good men to do nothing.
And like Solzhenitsyn says, all it takes to bring down a tyranny is one man to tell the truth. That's
There
it.
you go. All right, so now back on to telling the truth, because that is our mission here.
Yes.
You were put through the ringer. You were basically
Yeah.
forced to work at Northern Neck. You They had you up all night long. They barely let you sleep. It was a form of torture. Let's put it what it is. Let's call it what it is. I mean, come
Yeah.
on. Um, Describe what it was like in your experience at Northern Neck Regional Jail in Northern Neck, Virginia, Warsaw, Virginia, which is a regional privately owned jail that acts as a federal hub to hold both state and local inmates along with federal inmates with a federal contract. Um, we can get into that when a jail or a private facility has a federal contract, they're obligated to provide certain things to federal inmates, such as socks, boxers, shoes, a calorie intake that is sufficient for proper health. None of these things are done at Northern Neck, but it's even more egregious than that. And Rob was in a very unique situation, being a trustee. That went around and painted in all of the different dorms and units late at night and got to be in a situation where he saw things and things he probably wasn't supposed to see. So,
Yep.
Rob, go ahead from beginning to end and, have at it, brother. What was it like for Rob Lego Man Morse at Northern Neck Jail?
Well, I will tell you that the best word that I can describe that experience would be that it was a test. Every day was a test. It was an evaluation of how much you can take, how much you can endure, and then how much you can overlook, and then how much can you rely on God. I mean, now after everything that we've been through, especially because of Northern Neck, I feel as though we have things in common with Joseph and Jonah and Job. So I would call it my Jonas Brothers of the Bible experience. But it was a test, man. It was a challenge. Um, and I got the job for my mental, and it was almost as if because I wanted my mental prosperity while incarcerated, I took on the biggest challenge that you could, which is no sleep, no food, no medical care that was sufficient whatsoever, and you have to put up with this while inside of a 20 by 20-foot box with 24 men inside, all of them nut jobs, well, not all but most, and then have to endure the thumb of the guards. So with that being said, um, every night I would be summoned to paint the walls of Northern Neck Regional Jail, or the railings, which you and all the boys over there in L Pod or K Pod would notoriously pick the paint off of, so that I could come and say hi, which
We
was a good
we
memory.
we our philosophy was is the more you had to paint, the longer we got to hang out and see you and talk shit. So
That's right.
we would do damage every single day. So you would have a lot more to do when you came into our unit.
And you thought it was funny, but after
It,
like a couple weeks of doing that, it wasn't funny anymore, you
Rob,
know?
I have something I have to disclose to you.
Okay.
I still think it's funny.
I do too, deep down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, make them spend that, that money somehow cuz
Right.
it's, going in someone's pocket. So go back to that. You're a painter, you're going in the
Yep.
units and you're seeing things and
Yes.
you
So I'm
see
seeing the dirty little secrets that Northern Neck wanted to remain hidden. So every single night, I'm being tasked with painting over the blood on the walls. I'm being tasked with painting over whether it be mold or fecal matter on the walls or the ceilings. Yeah, not even joking. And then, and or painting over the cries for help that the inmates were leaving on the walls as a final act of desperation in some of the dungeons that Northern Neck is proud of. And so, I mean, it was spiritual warfare, it was physical, emotional warfare every single night. And though seeing you and the rest of the boys was a remedy to that, because I was able to kind of go from pod to pod and encourage those that I saw. I mean, here I am covering over blood spatters from inmates because of what a guard had done to them previously. Or here I am, being hauled into the kitchen yet again to cover over the black sheet of mold as thick as your television screen on the walls so that they can pass an inspection that they were tipped off a week prior. Or I'm covering over, little scratches or ink or even graphite etchings on the wall saying, "Help, I'm going to die, I'm going to kill myself, the guards don't care." And I'm having to remain calm and paint over this. Meanwhile, we haven't slept, we're not eating, things of this nature. So they're starving us, they're keeping us awake. And the only way that I got through that was through, the blessing and the protection of God. by which I do firmly believe was upon me because of the millions of people that were lifting me up in prayer on the outside. So this is my opportunity to say thank you. If you're hearing this message for the first time and you said a single prayer for me or for the J6ers within the last 4 years, I know that it worked because you were waging spiritual battle on my behalf in the spiritual realms, and I saw it. So that's huge. But I was seeing things I wasn't supposed to see, and I kept my mouth shut so that I wouldn't ruin my chances of seeing more while I was there. In addition to the fact that, as crazy as it sounds, being able to do these things gave me a little bit of mobility throughout the jail, and I needed that because otherwise I would have been locked in a box 24/7 that isn't much bigger than your living room with 24 other men.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they were very small living arrangements.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you think was probably the most egregious and foul thing you witnessed at Northern Neck in that one facility in your time there?
Where to begin? A lot comes to mind. I mean, guards whooping on inmates, forcing inmates to have to defend themselves while the guards challenge them to a bare knuckle fist fight, and yet the guards have like those knuckle gloves and taking them into the showers. I mean, I think this actually happened to Brandon. We were talking to him where he got taken to a place where they could bash his head up against a door where the cameras didn't see. Watching people get spat on and kicked while they were locked inside of a chair in the middle of the auditorium, like a taxidermied animal on the wall, so that every single inmate that was passing through the inner sanctums of the jail could remark on this one individual who is strapped um, to a chair and mock him just to advance his emasculation. I mean, there's just so many things. I've watched guards tempt an inmate with food that you wouldn't feed your worst enemy. But since we're so hungry and destitute, an inmate is obviously who's um, so so hungry that his bones and his ribs are showing, reaches out for food like this, and the guard will just throw that right in the trash seconds before the inmate could reach for that rotten biscuit that was loaded with mouth shit. So I mean, it was wicked. I mean, and then the guards, they laugh amongst themselves and they throw parties for themselves and they brag about how bad they got that one inmate and how much they were able to curb stomp an inmate like Captain English has, or it's just sick what these or like Lieutenant Taylor would do. It's crazy
Yeah.
what kind of monsters are employed in that jail.
It is. Well, that's the thing is with a private facility like that, a lot of people don't know that you don't have to have a qualification or a certification or any kind of training that is substantial at first. You can just get a job, and then they'll give you the training that the state demands is adequate, and they're responsible for overseeing and certifying that training. So they don't have to be they're not deputies, they're not police officers that work there. They would know a lot of them are people that couldn't pass the
Mhm.
local sheriff and law enforcement physical standards or background checks, and they were
Or
able to get it,
psychological
or
evaluations,
psychological evaluations. Exactly, they couldn't pass those at actual law enforcement agencies, and therefore
or
were able to,
military.
or military, or either have dishonorable discharges from the military, and were able to work at a facility like Northern Neck because they're in charge of their own standards. So um the caliber of person walking around in a uniform there is extremely low. The
Yes.
standard for them is extremely low, and that is something that can almost be said about every single privately owned facility, and even some that are not, because people of caliber, especially after the vaccine mandates, aren't really applying for these kinds of jobs anymore. So
Right.
the people that are applying for these jobs are the ones that couldn't make it at other law enforcement
Bottom of
agencies.
the barrel.
Yeah, or were fired from other agencies because of inappropriate behavior, insubordinate behavior. So that's something that people need to understand about privately owned facilities.
Oh yeah,
Um,
one of the lieutenants, you probably remember his name was Lieutenant Yerby.
oh
They
yeah, I
called him
remember.
Pervy Yerby
Yeah, he was
because
a weirdo, man. He
he
was an
not only was
absolute
he a
weirdo.
weirdo, but that guy was literally in trouble for having like molested inmates and then molesting people in a traffic stop. He used to be a police officer and then like used his authority that he thought he had because of the badge to overpower women and stuff like that. I mean, so I mean, it's just really disgusting people
Well,
that I had
I
to
have a
personally
really good
interact
idea.
with.
I have a really good idea. Let's give Yerby a officer's job and put him in charge of the women's unit. Doesn't
Right.
that make sense? I think we should go ahead full steam with that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right up there with let's take a known rapist male who's 6 foot tall and now wants to be a transgender and put them into a female prison. That's right up there with that kind of logic. It's all
Or
just
let's give a crackhead a top CEO position where he has no experience and wonder where the $80,000 a month went. I
right.
mean,
And that happens every year, baby.
yeah, yeah.
Every single facility.
It does. It really does. And that is what I believe the mission of we the J6ers.com is highlighting the J6ers that are passionate about prison reform, because it's my opinion that the word prison reform has become so cliche and watered down that just using it almost makes you sound not serious.
As far
And
as I'm concerned, the only thing that we've done as J6ers for prison reform is my video of me calling all those bastards out.
oh, it was a great video. I was telling you before we went live that I'm still getting comments from people, including my sister, that are very that know about that video, that saw it, and are very proud of you. It was
Thank you.
powerful seeing you of all people go back there and confront all of them, especially because they lied about you in one of
Mhm.
their meetings. They pretended to have a letter that you wrote, took it out of
Right.
character to
Yep.
try to say that Robert Morris was
Yeah, I
uh
love it here.
yeah, was what loved it being at Northern Neck Jail incarcerated.
Yeah, it's
And
a 5-star hotel.
yeah, so they're really tricky with the crap they pulled. But
Yep.
I would like it to take a moment to acknowledge the Northern Neck Patriots, the Tom
Yes.
Jeffries, the John Haynes, the Lieutenant Colonel Snively,
Yep. Snavely. Yep.
Snavely, great guy. Carol or Cheryl and Maurice Johnson,
Mhm.
Heather Young, all those people out
Sherry
there.
Pitts, baby. Sherry
Jerry
Pitts.
Pitts, there's they're still taking it to Northern Neck and trying to
I
implement
love it.
change there. So,
Well, the interesting thing that
kudos to
they've
them.
started is now, even though January Sixers aren't there, families that have suffered similar fates as us are completely corroborating everything we've said about that jail and more. And now there's like an advocacy group because of what they started years ago, so that the community that has suffered the weight of that demonic facility now has a family that they can confide in amongst themselves and know that they're talking to someone who knows their
Yeah.
language. So it's really beautiful what's transpired.
It is. It really is. And I want you just reminded me. I wanted to take a moment to talk about a story that I don't know if a lot of people have ever heard, that I got a chance to witness, and I think it was utterly beautiful. I'm not even sure if I was paying attention, but you were very adamant in while we were incarcerated, especially in Lewisburg, because we were more or less around each other 24/7
All the
until we
time.
were locked down. But you did a lot of prayer groups. You did a lot of praying with men and people that even weren't J6ers. And I slowly watched you develop a short-term friendship and prayer relationship with a 18th Street gangster from El Salvador, that young kid.
Yep.
And I mean, this was a hardened criminal who 18th Street is the adjacent opposition enemy of MS-13.
Yeah.
They're known to be a violent group of guys, and this kid was, I think, 19, 20 years old. And you guys began praying, and he was in your cell almost every day, and you guys were reading the Bible together and shooting the shit. And it was pretty incredible to hear this young man who grew up mostly in El Salvador and in the streets of Southern California, who was a hardened gangster, who understood American politics, who understood why people love Trump and how important it was for Americans to vote for someone like Trump, because he watched what socialism had did to his country. And at 20 years old, a gangster, pretty much the same type of individuals that Trump was going after, was still able to see that Trump's America First agenda was extremely important for Americans. So you and this kid develop this relationship, and you guys start praying together. And talk about that for a second. What was that like? You, Rob Morris, the Army Ranger, high school teacher, now in fucking federal prison, having prayer
Yeah.
sessions with an El Salvadorian gangster. Talk about that.
Well, it's crazy. I haven't thought of Jose for a long time. Not because I didn't want to, but because so many things have happened since. But no, he and I developed a relationship because that's the most beautiful thing about our faith is that once you believe in Christ and you believe that he rose from the dead, it doesn't matter what color of skin of people that you meet anymore because it didn't matter to Christ either. And so we really bonded on not just the shared faith that we have, and he came from more of a Catholic background, so and I didn't. So he talked about the traditions within Catholicism and Mother Mary and things like this. And so he knew that he had been rescued by God on several occasions, how he should have been shot and killed, and so his faith in God encouraged me. And he was looking at doing a lot more time than I was, and yet his faith was so cool because it wasn't just a tangible element of hope that you could hear in his words, but he wanted to be a good father. He wanted to be a good husband because of the faith that we shared. And so it was not just the fact that we were in prison, and it wasn't just the fact that we both love Trump. This man wanted to be a good man like I do. And he and I bonded over that, and we shared stories and we shared scripture, and we prayed over one another. We prayed for each other's families. And that's the most beautiful thing about our faith is that it transcends borders and time. But even though we were from different locations, because of our faith, we could respect each other's demographics and private property and ways of life and cultures and tradition and borders, because that's one of the biggest themes of the Old Testament and the Ten Commandments is respecting your other people's private property. And so it was a really good amalgam. That's what makes America great. Is the fact that we didn't withhold one another's brotherly love because we looked different or because he had different tattoos. It was actually a source of strength, and that's real diversity, not government imposed diversity, but diversity that comes from the body of Christ. And so that was a beautiful experience. And thank you for reminding me of that because I haven't even thought about him, and I had to pray for him tonight. And I hope he's home now.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool to get in touch with him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't I would not mind having him on the show to talk about some things. Um so let me bring you back to Northern Neck for a second because yesterday I was it yesterday? The day before I interviewed Robert Norwood from South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Good, yeah, great guy. I love
How's that
Robert.
crusty old guy doing, man?
He's doing pretty good, man. He's out there. He's got a decent job. He's just
Good.
trying to work and get his life back together. And
Yep.
he was one of the
As we
ones I
hope.
really always found to be a nice, genuine person. I have a lot of
Genuine.
respect for that guy. So he was a kitchen worker though pretty much the whole time he was there, like as you were a painter.
Yes.
And
He works side by
he
side with Nick Brockhoff.
yeah, another great. I love that kid, man. What a good
Yeah.
kid, man. Groot.
Yeah, man.
So he was describing what we all saw and all as far as the mouse feces on the bread and the live cockroaches on everything and all the
Yep.
food and utensils that they were
Jumping out
forced to
of your
cook with.
food when it's served to you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember me and Mason Corson were in line. I was behind Mason Corson, and he reaches through the pod to get his tray, and a fucking roach climbs off of his tray onto his hand, a live cockroach.
Yeah.
And I mean, the guard is like nothing he's not seen before. So
Right.
another day in paradise. So
Disgusting.
you were a painter. What did you can you corroborate all that? Did you see that when you would go in there and paint? What were the
Yes.
conditions like in where the food was prepared at Northern Neck?
I will tell you this. When I was asked to go paint in the kitchen, obviously it's late at night. So the kitchen's not in operation. I couldn't breathe in there, dude. I don't know how Norwood or Nick is honestly alive, and they should probably get their lungs checked because the disgusting, toxic air inside of that place was like a mix of death and fungus and decay. And it just constantly smelled like something was dead in there. And probably there were dead rats all throughout, the corners and things like that of the room. And then in tandem with the enormous amounts of mold that had been sandwiched in between layers of paint. So who knows how much mold is in that room? But you could walk up to the wall and you could take your finger and you could sink your finger into the depths of the wall because of the layers of mold and paint that had just adhered itself to the wall, and the walls were sinking off, and you could notice it at like the top edge of the wall there. There's a disparity between where the real wall started and where this disgusting layer of paint and mold was sliding off because of gravity, and underneath that was just like this orange rotten filth. I mean, it was just it was really like, you were in
and,
like some kind of charnel house, Dante's Inferno,
and this is where the
disgusting
food
stuff.
was prepared.
This is where the food is being prepared. This is where the mice live. This is where the roaches are hanging out. And then this is, I don't even know what kind of bugs were in there, but they looked like a scorpion mixed with a dragonfly spider thing. But they had these nasty little things on top of the ceiling I'd never seen before. And we'd have to just paint over them if we could, to try to kill them, because other than that, they would go somewhere and you never see them again. It was really foul. It was really monstrously foul. And I don't know how they're alive,
Yeah.
frankly. I mean, but everything he's saying I can corroborate. And I kept my mouth shut until that video you saw where I could throw it in all their faces. And I mean, and everybody knew it too, that the head chef, that little 3 foot nothing woman, was running around bragging about how all the money that she's being paid to feed the inmates, she's taking home so that she can do whatever the hell she wants with it. New quads are being bought by the staff with the jail's budget and everything like this. And it was just on and on and on, the amount of corruption and degradation that was taking place. And there was like a running joke. Haha, look at how much these inmates suffer. Haha, look at how much money we waste. Haha, look at how much poison we can feed them. And we watch them beg and starve. I mean, there's like some psychotic, sadistic people that are in there, and they're laughing about it right now. Right
Yeah.
now they're laughing about it.
It's not hyperbole. This is actually you're actually telling the truth. This is what's going
Yeah,
on.
I saw it all.
Well, again, we the J6ers.com, we're going to keep telling our stories so we can hopefully be a pillar of force in implementing change in the United States corrections facilities and department across the country, because it is in shambles and the American taxpayer is not getting what they're paying for. The consequences of this is the recidivism rate, that we're not rehabilitating anyone. The
No.
chances of them rehabilitating versus the chances of them entering the U.S. Justice system and becoming more hardened criminal is exponentially more significant
Yep,
because of the
recidivism.
way it's set up. And they're taking our tax dollars every single fucking month, every single year, and they're
Yep.
telling you that they have these programs in these jails and they're implementing these things that are going to help people rehabilitate and enter back in society as productive members, and it does not happen because they do not offer them. It's a joke, and the
Yep.
taxpayers are the butt of it, and it needs
Yep.
to stop.
I
So
got two things for you. One,
please.
when it comes down to, the recidivism situation, I don't know how it makes sense to anybody, but you take a young kid who made one mistake in his life, and then you put him in an arena with dogs. And if he survives, now you take that adult male who has had to fight for his life, fight for his food, fight for his sleep, fight for everything, and put him out here with a society that has been trained to be pussies, and he gets in one fight, he gets in one problem, he gets in one altercation, he gets sent back to the place where he was trained to be an animal, and now somehow it's his fault. No, I
Yeah.
think that the BOP is designed by our nation's enemies, and only our nation's enemies would fund and or advocate for the hellacious treatment of our own citizens. That's my belief, and that's my little theory, is that I wouldn't be surprised if Iran or China or whoever other country is actually pumping money into the BOP hedge funds so that America can continue to eat its own. And then the other thing I wanted to say is this: there's a powerful line out of C.S. Lewis's Prince Caspian, but you can watch the movie just to see this. Peter Dinklage was just coming up as an actor, and this is one of the first roles that I'd ever seen him in. But he plays a dwarf, surprisingly. And the four kids come back from their adventure in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe from the C.S. Lewis storylines. This is after, Aslan and everything. The kids come back, and a bear, a black bear, who they would normally have spoken to, who would have known English, who would have stood upright and acknowledged these four children, actually just attacks him, and the dwarf has to defend the kids, shoots an arrow through the heart of the bear, and kills the bear. And the four kids are shocked, they're devastated, because they're like, how could you kill a sentient life like that? How could you bring down someone that we would have loved and have trusted? And Peter Dinklage's character says, after having been treated like an animal for so long, it's hard not to become one. And that's exactly what's happening nationwide in every single facility. We got out, and we have our mental now because the good Lord and because millions of Americans prayed on our behalf and supported us. Had we not had that support, we would have become animals,
Sure.
and we would have been rejected by the society that we left. And we would have been doomed to a lifetime of incarceration to fulfill the goal of the deep state in this country, which is to establish and codify a prison state, a
Right.
national prison state like they have in North Korea. That is the goal. And BOP is alive and well, and they're doing it. If you want to see communism operating on American soil, look no further than the BOP.
Sure.
100%.
Well, I mean, to your point, you have what I got to learn, what we all got to learn was that you have a couple tiers of the BOP prisons. You have USPs, United States Penitentiaries, which are the highest, most maximum security, worst of the worst inmates and offenders go there. Then you have mediums, which are still really fucking bad. Then you
Yep.
have lows. A lot of them are still pretty rough. And then you
Yep.
have camps, which none of us were allowed to go to because they put a domestic terrorist label on us. But another story for another day. And they have a classification system, and they score you with points. The younger you are, the more points you have, the more likely you are going to go to a USP, a penitentiary. And I watched as my bus stopped. I had turned, I was 39 going into 40 at the time. I was going to a low, and this young kid, now he was from DC. I'm pretty sure the kid had an outstanding record, but nonetheless, he was going to prison. He was a 15-year sentence, and he was going to start off at a USP. He was 110 pounds soaking wet.
Mm.
He wasn't even 20 years old yet, and he was starting off at a maximum security facility. Now, I understand where the BOP and their classification system will say because he's younger, he's probably going to be more violent. And I'm sure that there's an element of statistical truth to that. But where are we as a society when we're not trying at such a young age to reverse that? And like you said, throwing him in a cage with the dogs, and hoping that he's going to come out of that situation untraumatized with no type of PTSD of fight or flight and survival, and be a better person. There's not a fucking chance in hell.
Let me explain to your audience what's going to happen to that kid. The second he gets off the bus, the BOP in their evaluation is not wrong. He will be extraordinarily violent. And this is why. Because he has two choices: either become the human masturbation pod for who knows how many men, or fight for his life, his dignity as a man, and for his very food for years, every single day, until enough people understand not to mess with this guy. His hands will be broken, his face will be broken, his ribs will be broken if he chooses the latter option. His lower half will be broken if he submits to the first. So
Yeah.
that young kid right now that you just referenced is having to live either one of those types of hells right now. He's either being raped constantly, or he's having to fight for his food right now because of the way that the BOP is designed. So, I
Yep.
mean, God damn the BOP for what they're doing to that kid right now and what we've had to see. And I really do admit that I have some survivor's guilt, because walking away from these men, listening to these stories, I'm grateful that we got the presidential pardon, and I'm grateful that we're now innocent, because we never should have been involved in what that day ended up becoming. Legally speaking, we had every right to be there at the Capitol because they stole the election. But as far as suffering what we went through, it is our job to raise awareness about what every young 18-year-old kid, whether they're white or black, is now having to face in these disturbed locations. So it's sickening to the core, man. What our nation claims, it's a free country and all this stuff. Not a chance in the world, dude. Take one trip through any BOP facility without having a heads up from higher that we have to clean this place up for an inspection, and you will hear the most heart-wrenching stories and learn the depravity that the human can succumb to when as desperate and as betrayed and alone. as these young men have become in those facilities.
Absolutely. And that, that's what we, the J6ers.com, is going to be doing. And that's our mission now, is highlighting what's going on in the prison system and having firsthand accounts and testimonies with speakers like Rob Morris, Enrique Tario, Shane Jenkins, Zach Reel, Kelly Meggs,
Yep.
myself. And we're going to be getting out there across the country and talking about serious justice and prison reform. What happened to Donald Trump should not be allowed to happen. What happened to his supporters, the January Sixers, should not be allowed to happen. What happened to the pro-life people that protested abortion clinics should not be allowed to happen.
And the
So,
Catholics and the
and the
Catholics that were
Catholics,
persecuted by the FBI.
and that's our mission, is to make sure that we can bring legislation forth to prevent any side of the political spectrum
Yep.
from being able to use the Department of Justice as an apparatus to inflict pain and suffering to advance their political agenda.
Tell you
That is
what,
what.
can I interrupt real quick? I want to ask your audience to do something for me. Do me a favor and then do yourself a favor, because
Well,
you have
first
both of us.
follow we the J Sixers at X. I'm pretty sure that's what you were going to say. I
Well,
feel
yeah, you took the words out of my mouth,
right
but
out of
there's a
your mouth.
caveat
Yeah,
to
right
that.
now, if you haven't, I mean, the first
Yeah.
comment in the live feed right now, we the J Sixers, help us build and grow, because we're not going to get out of your ear with this. But go ahead.
Print out your Bill of Rights and have a physical copy of that so you can read it and understand what your rights are. Those rights don't come from men. Those rights don't come from government. Those rights come from God, the same God who parted the Red Sea and who raised the dead. Those rights come from that creator. So print out the First Amendment, print out the Second Amendment, print out the Fourth and the Fifth and the Sixth and the 10th, and learn those things, because the only way that this government can get away with doing what they're doing to us is when we don't know our rights. Because if
And
you don't know them, how do you fight for them?
it's 100% accurate, but I want to put a disclaimer on that. If you have a police officer and he's got a Colt 45 aimed at your head and says, "Get out of the car and show me your hands," get out of the car and show him your hands. Don't reach in your pocket to grab the Bill of Rights to start reciting them. All right? That no one's
It's
saying
okay,
do that.
officer. I'm just looking for my Constitution.
No one's saying do that, ladies and gentlemen. Have some common fucking sense here. God.
That's hilarious.
What's funny is I got a lot of guys in prison to read Common Sense by Thomas Paine.
Good.
And it put a lot of insight on tyranny and why the Constitution and the American Revolution existed and happened. So
that and American Crisis, highly recommend those.
Rob, let's go to your trial. All right, you're a decorated war veteran. You have seen combat, you have engaged in combat, you have triumphed in combat on behalf of the United States. It's it's a constitution, it's people, and it's values. You took a plea. Am I correct on that?
No.
You went to trial.
I did.
Bench trial.
Yeah.
Bench. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And you had your trial. Explain that, and then explain the prosecution's behavior and stance towards you as an individual and a decorated veteran of the United States Army.
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I will say that it was an absolute show trial. But long story short, my attorney at the time, John C. Kiyonaga, completely failed in defending me. Had absolutely no evidence to defend me of any of the charges that were being discussed. And I was found guilty on obstruction of an official proceeding, robbery, and simple assault without having defended myself whatsoever. And essentially, the judge, Trevor McFadden, nods on as the prosecution claims that not only am I a danger to society and that I am a weapon and that I cannot be trusted in public life, but they also made the claim that as a teacher, I was teaching my students how to become domestic terrorists. And with that libel, my lawyer did not object, nor did the judge deem it worthy to intercede and say that's enough. That's just what, I mean, essentially, and I've said this on live television and CBS Pittsburgh, that the prosecution is writing the script for the mainstream media. And then the mainstream media, in a positive feedback loop, feeds it back to the people who then, the judge hears from again. So it's discussing what happened, but I was treated like Taliban. And it was a moment like I was in the twilight zone, where here I am incarcerated in the nation's capital, because before Northern Act, like we've been discussing today, I was in the DC jail for about 5 months. And while I was there, we were in solitary confinement, and I'm looking out of my window of my cell from solitary confinement at an angle so I can see the TV up on the wall. Like I said, I'm in the nation's capital in jail, and I'm watching the Afghan pullout on live television. So not only am I being compared to Taliban by the imposter president Joe Biden, commander in chief is calling me a domestic terrorist, while the very nation that I invested my youth in is literally going up in flames. So I don't know how much more you can add insult to injury on, but the cut to my heart was very deep, and I felt emotions that I didn't know existed, nor do they have a name. But it was a devastating blow, because everything I had fought for, whether it was being a teacher or fighting for our nation's liberty and the next generation, and to get back at the people that were responsible for 9/11, you name it, it was all going up in smoke in that one video and at my trial.
Well, I tell people all the time that I never knew what a broken heart felt like until I was in my pretrial release hearing and heard the prosecution call me a domestic terrorist. That's the first time I knew what a broken heart feels like. I just want to forewarn all the lefties that are hate watching right now that when you call me a domestic terrorist now and it comes from you, it's a badge of honor. So,
Right.
keep it up, ladies and gentlemen. We
8
welcome
Mile
all
effect activated.
we welcome all the hate and the negativity from your side, because we're getting ready for 8 years of JD Vance. So keep it coming, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, let's go.
Keep it coming. So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you can right now follow us on X at We the J Sixers. We are going to be highlighting all kinds of stories that have not been heard before, because now we're able to do so. We're out of prison. We are able to tell our side of the story, and we come with receipts at wethej6ers.com. So get prepared for a lot of things to be released. We're going to be releasing some of our discovery things and stories that have never been heard before, videos that have never been seen before. So again, follow us right now, We the J Sixers, on X and all other platforms. Rob, you have got to see a lot of different things while incarcerated. Now, I want to put a disclaimer on a question I'm going to ask you as on a personal level, that I am not referring to any one individual when I ask this. There's nobody in my mind. I'm not trying to try to make it seem like I'm talking about one individual. I'm not. I
You're
just want
not
to know.
gaslighting.
Yeah, not doing that. I want to ask you as an individual, from everything you've seen from facility, do you think, in your opinion, that it's possible that the government had plants in not only on January 6th, but were arrested and amongst us incarcerated pre-trial? Do you think that happened? Did you see things, without getting into specifics, that would give you that impression?
Well, I can answer your question with a question. If you were trying to ruin the credibility of these January Sixers, wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you put someone in the mix of them to make sure that all their dirty secrets and every stupid little comment that they made could be heard by a fly on the wall that had a price tag on? So I know that there were people amongst us that were there because, well, not only in jail, but on January 6th, were there without the same intentions or passions that you and I do, Barry. There were people there that just wanted to watch the world burn. There were people there that wanted to get Trump supporters shot and killed, and there were other people that wanted to make a name for themselves and get Instagram likes. And so you had all kinds of walks of life of people that have a price tag, and it explains the behavior that they're displaying now. But without a doubt, I know that we were amongst thieves and enemies, even when we ate in prison.
Well, and I'm not going to say his name and give him a platform, but you and I actually had a hand together in exposing one of these individuals. We went to Jim Hoft with the Gateway Pundit, and this individual's FBI debriefing became public. So it
Yeah.
wasn't that we came with receipts. And this individual stated that he was loosely affiliated with Antifa, and he did go disguised as a Trump supporter to
Yeah.
January 6th in hopes of getting Trump supporters shot. Those were his words in his
Those are his
FBI
words.
debriefing. There, it's
He also
public.
said that he was a proud communist.
Proud communist, yes, and those are again his words in his FBI debriefing. But the reason I bring that up is because when it came out and you and I got that story to the Gateway Pundit, the prosecution in his case recommended, because he was already at his sentencing point before the story came out. After it became public that he was a loose member of Antifa, was pro-communist, did go there disguised as a Trump supporter, his own words, um, the prosecution actually asked for less time against their own recommendation
Yep.
once they found out that he was a member of Antifa.
Yep.
That happened. You watched that happen. Now
As
with
far as I
you,
know, he's the only individual loped into January 6th where the prosecution begged the judge for less time as opposed to more.
in less time against their own recommendation, they recommended
Right.
109 months or something like that. I think I got the number right. It could be less or more. I think it was more, but then they came back and asked for 86.
It was almost as if the moniker that he had received was too much to handle, and they couldn't let libel go by without trying to ease his suffering. So they wanted to,
Yeah,
you know,
it was
throw
it
him a
was
bone.
pretty in a world where they're asking for all this time for Trump supporters. When they find out that one of us is not a Trump supporter, they ask for less time against their own recommendation. But
Yep.
now fast forward to you,
Yep.
you are getting sentenced. They use your service to this country as an asset against you.
Against me.
Pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong here, they pretty much say that you were trained by the United States to defend it and you use that training against it, is basically the philosophy that they were using, correct?
Yeah, that's what they said. That's what they claim was, and there's nothing in the Ranger Handbook about building a shield wall. Though it sounds cool, there is nothing remotely close to that. Essentially, I didn't use any of my training as a ranger against the government. But what I can say that I did use was my will to live and my ranger creed as an inspiration to survive what they put me through. So the only thing that the government essentially helped me do was to survive what they were going to put me through again. That's the
Mm,
only thing that I can give credit to the government for. But other than that, though, you've got a guy like we're beating around the bush about talking about, who's got a criminal history as longer than my arm, who has nothing to show for himself as far as qualifications or accomplishments or anything worth bragging about at all. Very proud to be a part of the Beggars Guild, whatever that is. And yet he not only has a prosecution that's asking for less time for him, but without any criminal history whatsoever, in my case, having served my country honorably within the special operations community and turning my life around to investing in the next generation as a teacher, my judge wanted to give me 90 months because he said that I was one of the most violent people there that day. And in addition to that, too, the guy Judd who threw an explosive device that was on my indictment, who only got 36 months, who was also a Marine. You and I talked about this because you were trying to encourage me, saying, "Hey, man, it's going to be okay. This guy is very similar to you." He did throw an explosive device at the police officers, and the same judge only gave him 36 months. So you might be sitting tight. I think you're almost at the tail end of this whole thing. I walk in there, and Judge McFadden was determined to make an example out of me. But something very strange happened in that courtroom. After I gave my speech, he like broke character and he looked at me straight in the face and he says, "Mr. Morse, can you just tell me what happened that day?" And it was almost as if our costumes were gone and we were just casual people having a conversation like you and I. And I told him, "Look, Your Honor, I was leaving. I had a job interview the next day. Getting involved in this was not on the agenda. I've lived my life with integrity. I'm sorry that people got hurt. That was never the goal or intention. I wanted nothing to do with going into that Capitol. But when I saw the police officers targeting innocent men and women and old folks and children with flashbangs, with rubber bullets, when I saw the police officers shield bashing old ladies in the face, when I saw police officers targeting the young, the sick, the old, That's when my Ranger training kicked in. That's when I decided to protect people. That's when I decided to say enough's enough. I was lured in just like you were. And what are we supposed to do? Sit on our hands like every other liberal and watch our friends get beaten and innocent people, get destroyed because we're too much of cowards to get involved? Or are we going to get involved to at least stand in the gap? Okay, so that's what I'm guilty of, if anything, is not only standing up for the Constitution and telling the world that I don't care. I know what I saw. The 2020 election was stolen, but I'm guilty of standing up for the individuals who fled China, who are passing out and the CCP flyers and getting in between them and the flashbangs that are being targeted at their old and their young. That's what I'm guilty of, and yet that's what makes me a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, well, and that's the other part of what we're hoping to expose at WeTheJ6ers.com is how dangerous it is for any side, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, to be able to weaponize the Department of Justice against their political opposition. That this should never be allowed to happen, and we need to fight until we have language in the Constitution that represents that. So, um, uh, getting to the end here, you 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 at your sentencing now, the prosecution does something a little peculiar, because now in this individual's case with that they argued for less time when they
Yeah,
found out he was a pro-communist Antifa fucking piece of shit.
yeah,
They for you get sentenced and they want to appeal your sentence. They want to
mhm,
give you more time. The
yep,
veteran, the school teacher, the
yep,
pro-American, the Trump supporter, they
yep,
want to give they want to appeal the sentence you get to give you more time, while they
yes,
argued for less time against their own recommendation
yep.
for the commie piece of fucking trash.
Yep. So
So
so yeah,
explain that.
yeah. Trevor McFadden, instead of giving me 90, he walked it down to 66 months after I just shot straight with him like I did with you. And then so 66 months was, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was still devastating because I had been praying that this whole nightmare would be over with. But yeah, that's exactly right. So as I walk out of the courtroom, the prosecution is already gearing up to make sure that I never get out, to make sure that I get appealed. And like I said before, only our nation's enemies would advocate for something like this. Only our nation's enemies would look at me, someone who has had a lifetime of service and honor. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here because I know God is on the throne and I give all credit, honor, and glory and praise to him. But I'm doing my best to be a good man, and yet I'm the guy that they're trying to give an even higher sentence to. That's un-American, dude. Americans back Americans up. If an American was the prosecutor, that he would have listened, or she, because there was a lot of females involved with this. They'd have said, "Man, this give him a break. He served the country. He's done nothing wrong in his life. No violence in his track record whatsoever. Let's cut him a break." No. If you're an enemy of America, you behave like the prosecution did in every single January 6th case. If you're an American, you'd have our back. These are anti-American domestic enemies of the state that have wormed their way inside of our government, and they're trying to crush opposition. They're trying to crush anybody that loves God, that loves our constitution, that loves the MAGA movement. And only our nation's enemies would sign off on ruining my life the way that it has been and sending me to the BOP where communism reigns supreme.
No, well, it definitely does. I will say that there was a lot of good guards in the BOP, and some of the different facilities in the SIS department. And if there is any of them
But why were
listening,
they the anomalies?
well, they're the exception that kind of proves the point, I guess, you know.
Right.
But what I would like to say to anybody from the Bureau of Prisons that may be listening, that came in contact or encounter with the January 6th, that was privy to some of the things going on behind the scenes when it comes to us, it's your time to come forward over the next several weeks. And I'm encouraging you to get a hold of somebody from this show on any of our social media platforms. And you can remain anonymous, but the time to come forward is now, because with some of the information in the FOIA requests that we have coming back and the lawyers we have working on, we're going to go full steam ahead, and we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen to any citizens of America in America anymore, no matter what side of the political spectrum they on. So, if you're out there and you're with the BOP, or you've got information about how the Department of Justice under Mayor Garland really violated the Constitution when it came to how they dealt with the J6ers in custody, suggest you come out soon because, like I said, we're just going to leave it there. Rob,
Yeah.
one thing I do have that I'll send you a copy, and I'm going to one day post it on this show. I have a letter that Peter Navarro wrote to the warden, basically putting him on standby that if Trump gets back in office, fucking start writing a resume. So it's a
I
pretty,
love
it's a
it.
pretty,
I
it's a
love
pretty
it.
cool letter. It's a long letter,
That's
and
good.
I do
Hey,
have
do
a
we have time
copy.
for one more story?
Hell yeah, we do, brother. I have time for you no
Okay.
matter what. I'm actually under the weather, not feeling the best, and not wearing any pants. So
Oh,
but for
dude,
you,
me neither.
for you, I've got all the time in the world, brother. What's up? Talk to me.
Hey, so you'll like this story and your audience will too. So, obviously, when we first showed up to the DC jail, everybody in that jail hated us because it was
Sure.
fresh. The day just happened. Maybe,
The
we're a
white
month or two away
supremacists
from it.
attacked the freaking
Neo
Capitol.
Nazis, we got it
Yeah.
all, dude. Yeah, we got every moniker, everything. But then after a while, the DC boys started to recognize that the work that we were doing within the DC Gulag to expose the way that those inmates were being treated, the way that the diet was completely horrendous, the conditions of the jail, everything like this, whether it was like the razor sharp metal that was exposed within the cells to give you rabies and tetanus and what knows else, the mold that was in there, the broken plumbing, the water that was coming out that was more brown than your coffee table. I mean, the list went on and on of how disgusting the DC jail was. And once we started exposing this stuff, we actually got the marshals to come through and check out the DC jail. And the DC jail ended up losing a pretty a pretty big federal contract because they ended up like writing off a whole section of the jail. And so once the DC boys started to recognize that, wait a second, these white boys in there, yeah, they might be Trump folks, but they're actually improving the conditions of the jail, regardless of how we treated them. We started to change the narrative within not just the culture of the jail, but DC boys in general. And so, as you know, the DC car is nationwide because DC it's not a state. And so there's DC boys throughout the entire BOP, all over the place, regardless of the fact that they're from the DC area. And so word got around, dude, because word travels fast in the BOP. Come to find out that the January Sixers, they're all right dudes. And when I returned to the DC jail the second time around when I was about to be sentenced, I remember standing at one of the intake places, and you got the sliding glass doors and stuff. And, there's a couple DC boys walking by. Well, here I am, like, kind of like getting ready to, receive, some hatred, if you will, and look like I'm not going to back down and kind of put my wall up, as we have been trained by the experience that we went through. But they're walking by, they see my skin color, and they say, "Hey, you a J6er?" And I say, "Yeah, what's up?" And the dude puts his fist up against the glass and says, "Thank you. We respect y'all." And I was like, wait, what? Dude, what a change. What a change. Because the attitude from the beginning to the attitude that I saw there was night and day. And when I was in
Oh
the
yeah.
Philadelphia Holding Center, I had a boy come up to me. He was in a gang. He didn't care. This guy looked like Kevin Hart ate Kevin Hart. And he comes up to me and he says, "Man, y'all J6s are crazy. Y'all went after the head of the snake in broad daylight." And that's the most gangster shit I ever seen.
Yeah. It's funny because I have a very, very airy similar story. And I was going up and I was just being extradited from Florida to DC. I stopped through USP Atlanta
Yeah.
on my way up. I'm finally out of the cell for like the first time in like 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And there's in Atlanta at that time, because it was different when I went back through a year later. Was controlled by the Bloods gang. And when I say
Yeah.
controlled by the Bloods gang, I mean an officer, when we were all locked down, walked up to the trustee who was like the shot caller for the Bloods and asked him, the officer asked him if it was okay to let an inmate out for a legal call, if there was going
What?
to be any problems if they walked him across the fucking the unit where there was just five Bloods out.
Yeah.
They
Don't go
looked in
down the
the
run.
cell. They looked in the cell and gave the officer permission to let the guy out. So when I say it was controlled by the Bloods, I mean it was controlled by the Bloods. So I'm out. I'm doing some fucking sit-ups out in this little caged basketball court. And I see all these guys talking, and all morning long on CNN, on all the TVs, is January 6th shit.
Yeah.
So I'm out there. I see these guys talking and looking at me and pointing and whispering. So I'm like, oh shit, something's gonna go
Here
down.
we go.
They start walking over towards me, and I'm like, son of a
Yeah.
bitch, I'm about to get fucking stomped out by 10 dudes.
Yep.
And the shot caller there, they called him QB quarterback. And he came up and he had his little fucking 9 minions around him, and he looked at me, he goes, "Are you a
His little
J6?"
entourage.
Yeah, he's like, "You a J6er?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, there was this long pause and silence, and I was like, this is where it's going down. It's exactly like you said. He goes, "Man, that was the most gangster shit I've ever seen in my life, bro." Took me to the front of the phone line, got me on the phone, got me an extra chicken tray the next day. It was pretty cool. So it was not the red carpet response I thought was going to be stained in blood, but this one was an actual red carpet as far as prison was concerned. Pretty
Isn't
cool.
that crazy?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I was telling I think it was Billy Cressman. I was talking to him about, they moved a lot of us diesel therapy all over the country, and when I first got into the prison system, I would see it, every jail cell you're at and holding cell you're at, you see all the gang tags, MS-13 and Serenos and fucking Bloods and Crips.
Leaving their mark.
Yeah. But as time went on and I continued to travel through these same jail cells across the country, you start to see J6ers, Trump 1, Trump 2024, free the J6ers, Proud Boys were here. And it was pretty crazy. They just overtook the entire federal holding system, so from coast to coast. So that was a moment of pride, in my opinion. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, we're on X now. We the J6ers, all other platforms, Truth Social, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Getter. We the J6ers. Follow us. It's important. We're going to be showcasing and highlighting a lot of these guys' stories and girls, so we can really implement some justice reform. And it's going to take you guys doing the really, really hard fucking work and clicking that damn follow button, or typing in at We the J6ers in the search engine. I know it's really hard, but if you want to see our voices amplified, that's going to take you subscribing, and sharing. It's that simple. And we hope that you get behind us, because we're looking to fuck shit up, man, in a good way. Yeah. We're not just going to remain silent and
we haven't
complacent.
Even begun to fight.
I don't know about you, Rob, but I don't play for the fucking NFL. I'm not going to take a knee for the Constitution or the anthem or American pride. You can kiss my ass.
That's right.
So Rob Morss, Lego Man. We went through hell together. We're still doing it. Rob, again, is a featured speaker for WeTheJ6ers.com. He has quite a story. And you wrote a book. With Kelly Meggs.
See it real quick?
I want to see it real quick. This is Rob Morris's book. One question remains. And I want to say that the most important and amazing part about Rob writing this book is that there is a sentence or two where I'm in it.
That's right. You get
so I
didn't write it by myself. Kelly Meggs and I, we did this together.
Okay,
As you can see, we got both of our pictures back there.
Yeah, Kelly Meggs, the guy that was actually trying to help police officers that day, that was accused of trying to hurt them. And it's all on video. You can
ridiculous.
Clearly see him helping.
He hasn't gotten a pardon.
Yeah, I know him. Joe Big, Zach Reel, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, these guys, and I'm going to go out and say this. These are the guys that deserve the pardon the most.
Oh yeah.
And above a lot of us,
and
myself included. Joe Biggs is a war hero, is a veteran. Zachary Reel, the same thing. Dominic Pizzola, Kelly Meggs, Stuart Rhodes, Jessica Watkins, Kenny Harrelson. These guys, these people have defended this country honorably, and they did nothing that day. They were accused of some very heinous things, and I believe in my heart of hearts that there's some work being done that's going to redeem these guys and vindicate them, because they deserve it. And we're just going to hold patient for now, but our voices will not be silenced in the end. We're not going to rest until all of our people are pardoned. And so that's that. Rob Morss, man, thank you, my brother. I love you. And And again, can't wait for you to get your ass to South Florida, man.
Hey, it won't be long. I'll be down there mid-June.
All right, good. That's good because we got a place for you. We got a guest room, and
Thanks, man.
it's got your name on it. So we're gonna definitely party hard. I know you're not a
Yeah.
big drinker and all that, but you don't. It's not my.
Anymore.
It's not Miami unless you have a real mojito, my brother. So you know, it's kind of hard when you have a beautiful Cuban bartender in a G string. It's really hard to say no. So we'll see what you got.
Hey, as long as she believes in Jesus Christ, we can
Oh
talk.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure she's more than willing to be nailed to a cross for you, brother.
Oh
Um,
man!
it's Miami, dude. I love you,
Wow.
man. You are like a
I love
brother to
you too,
me.
bro.
I don't
Hey,
care if
thank
it's
you for
four
taking
o'clock
the
in the
time,
morning and
man.
you're fucking 500 miles away. You call me and I'm there for you, my dude.
I appreciate you, brother. Likewise, I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job, man. You look great. You sound great. And keep it up, man. My mom and I are big fans of you.
Yeah, yeah, no, your mom's a great person, man. My fiance's she's become family to us,
Yeah.
man. So definitely, guys, right now follow at We the J Sixers. The website is wethej6ers.com. Look forward to our content, share our videos out, and let's give these men and women a voice because we're gonna really confront this Bureau of Prisons in the federal system. God bless you, my brother Rob. Well, that was Rob Morris, Lego Man. You heard how he got his name. It's a fucking joke. The whole thing was a fucking joke. Every one of our trials were a fucking joke. The men and women, the J6ers that took pleas, you were just as brave as anybody else. The shit you were put through to elicit that plea is an issue in this country that we need to address. And I believe that God has called the January Sixers together to unite to stop the process known as the plea bargain, to address the corruption in the Department of Justice, to make sure that the Department of Justice can never be weaponized against political opponents on the right or the left. That what happened to Donald Trump can never happen to anybody else going forward. And in order to do that, it is my personal firm belief that we're going to have to see some people suffer consequences for their actions in even attempting to weaponize the Department of Justice. And those that did it need to pay and need to be made an example of because this cannot be allowed to happen. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask that you follow us on X at We the J Sixers, all other platforms at We the J Sixers, our website wethej6ers.com. Check us out. Consider booking one of our live speakers for your conservative events so we can continue to tell our stories. And there's some interesting shit that we haven't come out with yet that we're going to be doing so. And we look forward to you taking that journey with us. So thanks for tuning in. My name is Barry Ramey. I am the host of The American Rising on the War Boy Studio. This is a segment of our show called We the J Sixers. And God bless America. Don't forget to sing the national anthem when it arises. Put your hand over your heart and stand up. Never take a knee to communism. You don't play for the NFL. Put your money where your morals are. Buy American. And you know what? Fuck these Marxist bastards. Let's get ready for these primaries and midterms, ladies and gentlemen. A hooroo.